Hey there, this is Dicebag. You're watching some artwork I've done for Crytures, the monster collecting tabletop RPG that I've been working on. While you're watching, I wanted to talk about investor culture with you, specifically investor culture in gaming. And this can apply to pretty much any kind of creative industry out there. There's kind of a conflict of interest out there between creative businesses especially and investors that might want to get in on the action, so to speak. So first off, the business itself, basically, it wants to continue existence. And it manages two relationships in that sense. You've got the employees, and of course the employees, well, they want to keep their jobs. They want to have food on the table, they want to be able to provide for their families, so they're incentivized to, keep the business going. And they're going to be willing to make some concessions here and there as long as the business is treating them alright. Because they need the business to keep providing for them. On the other side of the fence, you've got the customers. Now, customers, they want the products. They want the products at a reasonable price, and they want the products at a good quality. And the business in the middle wants to keep both of these parties happy because they basically define the existence of the business. And both sides want the business to exist. Now, investors, on the other hand, they want two things: growth and profit. They don't really have an incentive in the long term to stay with the company. And basically what they want to do, what they want to maximize, is the ability to grow their stock values as much as possible, as fast as possible. That way they can sell off their shares near the peak, because there's always a peak. And then they want to take that money and reinvest it in other places that have not hit their peak yet and are still seeing high rates of growth. Beyond that point of hitting the peak and selling off, divesting yourself, it doesn't really matter to the investors what happens to the company. And of course, between the employees and the customers, that means that the investors are effectively at odds with both. They're basically at odds with the continued existence of the business, because they're looking for the fastest gains in the shortest amount of time. Tends to be very short-term thinking. Whereas the employees kind of need to keep their jobs for as long as possible. So that's one way that the investors kind of screw with these kinds of companies. Another thing is that they tend to insert themselves into every transaction in order to maximize profit from each of those relationships I mentioned earlier. So you'll get questions from the investors saying like, "Why are you paying your employees so much?" Of course, they want to pay the employees as little as possible, so they'll instigate layoffs so they don't have to pay as many people. They'll try to overwork people so they can get as much productivity out of as small of a workforce as possible. They'll try to reduce benefits and all that. And of course, ultimately this is bad for the company because in the long term it's gonna push the risk of having your employees try to unionize if it gets a little too oppressive. And, people can go back and forth on how well unions do for employees, but they're almost always a bad thing for the company itself. Now, on the other side of the fence, on the customer side, investors are going to start asking, why aren't you charging customers more? Because, of course, happy customers means you're not squeezing them hard enough. And that's why you see the rise of things like subscription services. We all love those, don't we? Oh boy. Microtransactions. Ugh. $80 games with day one DLC. Oh yeah, it's not enough to just have like your $70 games that you play and find another one. No, they want to hook you. They want to get their hooks in you. They want to have their season passes and their cosmetics that they get you to buy. And those things might have their place in some way or another, but usually not as aggressively monetized as they get. And of course, if you monetize your game too aggressively, well, then your customers are just gonna leave and go somewhere else. Then there's one more big way that investors kinda screw over these creative type of businesses, these entertainment businesses, and that's that investors want to get the biggest audience possible. So as soon as investors come in, start taking over a company you like, well, say goodbye to your niche. They don't want to serve your niche market, they want to serve every single market they can get their little greedy fingers in. And you know what that means. It means all your games are going to be dumbed down from then on. It means all your nuanced mechanics out the window. Normies can't handle nuance. It means that your studio is going to be jumping on all kinds of bandwagons, especially with things like genres. I mean, how many zombie games have we seen? That's been one of the biggest ones. Frankly, I'm tired of seeing zombie games everywhere. And thankfully they've been winding down, but man, the last decade or so has been zombies everywhere. And then after it was zombies, it was like dystopian future and all that, and they wring the life out of these genres just by saturating the market with stupid clones, because they want to get in on that bandwagon. And of course, this also happens with ideological stuff. The cause du jour. We've seen a lot of that with the whole DEI consultant groups that have been hired by a lot of these studios and their woke culture that's been permeating many of the games we've been seeing come out, especially the biggest ones, the ones that investors want to stick their fingers in. And eventually all these little things compound and just destroy what the company was built to be in the first place. And in the past year or so, we've seen a lot of those ramifications come home to roost. We've seen studios shutting down, people getting laid off left and right, and this is peak investor culture. Because now it's time to divest. Now it's time to move on to the next thing. Pump it up, devour it from the inside out, destroy any long-term sustainability, and consume it. Move on to the next thing like locusts. So, with Dicebag Games, one of the main things I'm thinking about in the business side of things is the avoidance of investors. I cannot stand what they bring to the table, and I don't see myself ever taking on investors unless they're like some kind of passionate people that just want to get in on it. But they're gonna have a lot of proving to do on that. I don't generally trust them, and I sure as hell wouldn't trust a company that I'm building with them. So I'm gonna go ahead and make the pledge right now: no investors in Dicebag Games. We're not taking any. You can count on Dicebag Games, as long as it exists, to create games for gamers, not investors. So let's wrap it up there. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you like the game I'm working on here. So if you haven't seen it yet, you can go check out the rest of the channel here. I've got a solo campaign where I'm just playing by myself and working out some of the game mechanics as I come to them. Lots of playtesting going on for Crytures right now, so I'd appreciate it if you go and check it out and leave some feedback there if you want. And of course subscribe and like the videos and all that. So with all that said, be well, conjurers, and may you walk the waking dream.